you able to get confirmation from Nora that she's coming today? No, Yvonne said she was coming. I think they see her coming. Yeah, they have it. So it's all, I checked it. I'll just say do that or you can advance it yourself, just using the air down.
Mayor Mendoza? This is Sara Vasquez from.
Right at the door.
And there you are. I'm here.
Join me.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor. Thank you. Oh, how sweet. Thank you. Oh, those are nice. Very nice.
Mayor Padilla won't be with us, but he's got his council member Olga Nunez.
That's what he was telling me.
So you'll be sharing.
Okay.
Sit wherever you want.
Where do you want me to sit?
This is good right here, if you don't mind.
Oh, if you
We're
want to
done.
sit. Okay, whichever.
Yeah, 'cause that way you have to go and you get
I'm walking out of the office and
straight across.
get called. Like, one more thing, one more thing.
So, yay, so we have 5.
Okay. And Manny's gonna participate? Or Mayor Murillo?
Mayor Padilla is on the line right now.
Okay.
Olga Nunez and H. Howard, so 3 on the line.
And that's two.
And you 2. And Sancho said he was coming, but he didn't.
Oh, he's out there in the,
Oh, okay.
with the news media or somebody.
Well, then he'll be with us shortly.
Yeah. Hi, how are you, Yvonne?
Pues aquí, ¿cómo estás?
Good.
Me da
It's good to
gusto
see you. I
verte.
feel like it's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been one thing after another.
Hello.
How are you?
Pues
Good to
aquí,
see you.
it's good to
Long
be
time
here.
no see.
I know. I've been missing you actually. I have.
We'll catch up after.
You had a jet in town?
Yeah. How did you know?
And then-
Oh, and yeah, my oldest brother died last year, and then the second eldest died.
Couple of months ago?
No, just Sunday night.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Y luego mi hijo had to go out to, he lives in England, Chico. Porque, oh, thank you. Ay, gracias. Wow. Uh-huh.
So that's a good sign. So let me ask you this. So we have it, wanted me to ask about fixing all that. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our South Central Regional Transit District Board Meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 26, 2023. It is 1:36 p.m., and we are at the Doña County Government Center. At this time, if we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
God, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Becky, if we could please have a roll call
Nora Barraza,
here.
Olga Nunez,
Here.
Meiji Powie, Yvonne Flores,
Here.
Manuel Sanchez,
Present.
Diana Murillo.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Becky. At this time, if we could have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
So moved. Mayor
Second by
Murillo.
Flores.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanchez, seconded by Councilor Flores. Any discussion, comments regarding the agenda? Hearing and seeing none. Becky, roll call, please.
Nora Barraza,
Yes.
Olga Nunez,
Councilor Nunez?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a yes for the approval of the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Meiji Powie,
Yes.
Yvonne Flores,
Yes.
Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Diana Murillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the motion does pass unanimously. At this time, we have public input. If anyone from the audience would like to come up to the podium, state your name for the record. Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to the next item, which is approval of the SCRTD meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2023. If we could have a motion on the floor, please.
I'll move approval. Sanchez.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanchez
Meiji Pally, I'll second.
and Trustee or Mayor Pro Tem Howie, second. Any comments, discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing and seeing none. Becky, please. Roll
Nora
call.
Barraza,
Yes.
Olga Nunez,
I would like to abstain. I wasn't here.
thank you. Meiji Powie,
Yes.
Yvonne Flores,
I have to abstain. I wasn't here. Thank you.
thank you. Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Diana Murillo,
Yes.
passes. Thank you.
Okay, the motion does pass. The next item on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report, and Mr. Armijo will give the Director's Report.
Go. All right. All right. Good afternoon. For the record, David Armijo, Executive Director, South Central Regional Transit District. So for my overview, I'm going to talk about 5 key items, so 5 slides. So it should be brief. I'll talk a little bit about ridership. I try to do that every month, and I'll break it down by routes. We'll talk about, brought up that we expect to have buses, but have now been delayed. I'll talk about that. We also have some Region 6 funding that we've talked about for the last 2 years, and that's also been delayed. And I'll talk a little bit about funding that's coming in June for the next fiscal year, which is actually going up. So some good news there. And then our environmental assessment that's being required on our Sunland Park property. I'll get into some details on that as well. So ridership growth, if we follow the chart, we can see that on the bottom line is we're now at 80,000 rides. So if you go back to, in fact, if I may, Nora, bring Vice Chair, if you remember the first year, we're lucky to do 18,000, so we've come a long ways. So we're right on track. We'll come in probably under 100,000, but we'll be close. This is on our fiscal year from July to June. The federal fiscal year, which is what we call the National Transit Data Reports, which actually affects our funding, that is from October through September. We have a pretty good shot on that one to come in above the 100,000 mark. And so, and we'll get into some budget stuff later today, but Adam and I have been spending quality time with our regional office, and we'll talk about that on funding. And so what's in the ridership report actually will affect money, how much money we get, and not just for us, but also for the region. Bus delay. This is the Aerotech buses, or one of them, similar to Aerotech. It's actually the different bus, but similar in size. So they're mid-sized buses. They actually reached Albuquerque about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, as they're going through final pre-check, which Creative Bus, which is the manufacturer that we buy the buses from, they found that there was a problem with the vehicle. So they're doing a warranty check so that they haven't released it. They are, as I laid out here, they're the official contractor that the New Mexico Department of Transportation uses to inspect the buses. And the buses came from, was it Indiana on this one? I lose track. I think it was Indiana. So they made the trek all the way to New Mexico and to their offices in Albuquerque, but at that time, in the final review, they found a problem. So they didn't get into the details with me. It's, you know, it's being resolved and they're paying for it. So, but we should see those soon, I would hope, no later than next month in May. And so we still have plans to roll those out. So that's a little bit unfortunate news, especially we've been waiting for those for 2.5 years. About 2 years or so ago, I came to this board and asked for some help and assistance, and we started working with the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization of El Paso, and also the city of El Paso. And we eventually, in 2021, I resolved our concerns and issues and found that we could, in fact, access the New Mexico money that's in that region, which includes everything from Chaparral, Anthony, Sunland Park. So in their metropolitan area, that gives us additional funds. And so those funds had not been used by the transit district since we've had an opportunity to get them. So those were then set up in a side letter agreement, which that goes from the summer or fall of 2021 to April 2022, which is coincidental. It was right after the war in Ukraine started and the US budget actually got approved. And in there, we got a partial. Well, that was followed by a full grant in late June, actually August, and then so we got a letter in October from El Paso. So that then triggered the grant. Adam and I have been working diligently. I can't even imagine, Adam, was it, we figured 50, 70, 100 documents. I mean, we've been going through everything. We had to do legal review, operations review, technical assistance, disadvantaged business enterprise, civil rights. In fact, we just resolved the civil rights issues last week and all that. So that's been an ongoing process. The annual funding for that is $696,000. We've got about, I think it's 296, 294, something like that. He's going to go into the budget later, but we have some of that money programmed this year. And so those funds have not become available to us. So we've had to use other funds and tap into some of our reserves as a result of that. But we believe we're very close to seeing those funds. And fortunately for us, because we're now a direct recipient, unlike the state of New Mexico, we're a subrecipient. So in New Mexico, we have 12 months to spend our money down. Under this scenario, we have 6 years. So we still have until 2027. So there's opportunity to work through that. New Mexico DOT did author, well, they have not sent us the final letter of award. We won't probably see that until either late May or early June. But we anticipate seeing more money in that grant. We did ask for, once again, we've asked several times, we did ask for money for Sierra County. We've been told that there will be additional funds for that. We won't know until we know. And so it does include 2 more of these small mid-sized buses. Again, we're trying to replace those first 5 buses that we received from the state back in 2015, which are now 8 years old. And some of those buses have well over 300,000 miles on them. So their life was about 250. We've already gone past the life of those vehicles. So they've served us very well. And we're looking at a couple of vans in that grant that would help us both in the northern part and the southern part of the county. doing some form of a mobility program, not quite ADA, but it would be something similar to that. And last on my list is the NEPA environmental assessment. We had hoped to avoid this. We were working with city staff from the engineering department of Sunland Park, City of Sunland Park, and the county, but we were not able to locate any previous documents that would be available. So we've been directed by the regional office and the folks in Santa Fe to go ahead and do the NEPA. We've also been advised that we'll be refunded those funds. We estimate right now it could run close, just under 20,000. So that grant from the state will be helpful to us. I think that one's going to be 90-10 because it's environmental, but if not, it'll be 80-20. So we'll have to come up with a little bit of money for that. We hope to have that award in the next week or so, and then hopefully we'll be able to move forward to finish off the environmental. But environmentals can take some time. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Armijo. So the RFP has been submitted and the funds are prospectively coming in? Is that what I understand?
That's exactly what I said. Thank you. However, we do have other access to funds. So in other words, the original grant we got for this, which is the 3.1 million, the funds could come out of that. But in lieu of that, the state has said that they'll go ahead and give us the funds, so that way we'll have the funds sooner than later in that regard. So yes, we would need those funds before the end of May to draw that down. Any other questions?
Mr. Armijo, so the assessment of the property, clarify what property?
We're talking about Sunland Park.
Sunland Park property, okay.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I showed the picture. It's inside the garage. I need to label the pictures, so that's on me, so thank you. And that's it. Any questions on that? I know we have a lot to talk about today on the budget, so we have another presentation. So thank you.
I think.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Any questions? Okay, anyone that's on the line, do you have any questions for Mr. Armijo?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we will continue with the rest of our agenda. The next item is a presentation from the Far West Texas / El Paso Regional Transportation Coordination Committee, the WTEP, regarding the approved Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ, from May 1st, 2023 through October 31st of 2023. And Mr. Javier Banales will do this presentation. Thank you. Yeah. A lot of work.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Javier Bañales, members of the South Central Regional Transit District. And Mr. Armijo, thank you very much for inviting me to visit with you and present information about the work of the Far West Texas El Paso Regional Transportation Coordination Committee. So the genesis of this committee actually goes back to the signing of the American with Disabilities Act by President Bush in 1990. The ADA mandated that reasonable accommodations be provided to elderly persons and persons with disabilities. Advocates for this population noted that even after ADA had been approved, there was a disconnect between transportation service providers and social services. And they felt that there was a need to communicate and collaborate with social service agencies that serve this population. So as many times happens, Congress will pass a law, mandate certain things follow and be done. But then afterwards, there's certain gaps that develop, certain areas that were not being addressed clearly. And one of these was, again, the coordination communication between transportation services and social services. In 2003, the Texas legislature required the coordination of public transportation services funded with federal, state, and local funds. A year later, the federal government called for the reduction of duplication by federally funded transportation services and expanding access to transportation services to elderly, persons with disabilities, low-income persons, and others, veterans, for example. In 2005, a year later, the federal transportation bill that was passed by Congress established called for establishing locally developed, coordinated public transit human service transportation plans. And so this is what actually evolved to where we are today. In 2006, TxDOT became the entity in Texas that was charged with coordinating with the 24 state planning regions the development of regional plans, again, that address transportation and social service coordination. I'm sure that something similar was happening here in New Mexico, but we can get into that a little later. So in 2006, El Paso County, the Area Agency on Aging, and a 501c3 agency, Amistad, came together to establish the West Texas El Paso Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee. For short, it is called WTEP, West Texas El Paso. And so El Paso County became the lead and fiscal agent for the coordination of regional planning. In 2017, the county decided to not continue in that capacity, and so Project Amistad, a 501c3 agency in El Paso that provided non-emergency medical transportation, as well as a number of other social service programs, became the lead and fiscal agent. And through Project Amistad, then the committee continued to function. And in 2022, TxDOT approved the West Texas Regional Plan for 2022 through 2026. So since its inception in 2006, there had been 5-year plans done every 5 years. And so we are now in the current plan, again, that goes through 2026. Just as an FYI, these are the regions in Texas that we have for the Texas TxDOT. And of course, we are in Region 8, which covers El Paso County, Hudspeth, Culberson, Jeff Davis, Presidio, and Brewster counties. And so again, the purpose of this regional coordinating committee is to eliminate waste in the provision of public transportation services. These purposes here are in line with what was mandated to occur statewide. Number 2, to generate efficiencies that will permit increased levels of service and to further the state's effort to reduce air pollution. So the Texas Department of Transportation, through their Public Transportation Division, was charged with being responsible for monitoring, guiding, and funding the continuation of regional planning. So way back in 2006, and all of those regions that you saw received funding to develop the regional planning groups throughout the whole state of Texas. And of course, the question is, well, why do we need regional planning? Even though it had been mandated by Congress, the question always came up, why do we need it? Well, through regional planning, it creates a more efficient and effective network of public transportation services. It leads to the identification of resources to get people to their desired destinations. It would have communities come together to develop 5-year public transportation human resources plans, bringing different entities together under one roof, and to identify inventories of transportation resources that were available. This became important later on when, after 9/11, there was a need nationwide within the states to ensure that they have accurate, complete inventories of all the vehicles, public vehicles, and vehicles that were used by nonprofit organizations to transport individuals within the different states. Because in the case of a crisis, an emergency, or a hurricane or a tornado, there's always a need to bring together and to request public transportation to be made available to individuals that may be caught in the incidents that may have occurred. So having a reasonable, complete inventory of statewide vehicles is important. And so there was also the need to have a comprehensive needs assessment and gap analysis in the region. So here the question comes up, well, why New Mexico agencies are involved with the West Texas El Paso Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee? Well, of course, as we know, several communities straddle the Texas-New Mexico border: Chaparral, Sunland Park, Anthony. Of course, a bus service has existed in the past between El Paso and Las Cruces. It's not a daily, I don't think it's a daily service, but and of course, the South Central Regional Transit District operates bus transportation services between El Paso and Las Cruces and points in between. El Paso County and Doña Ana County have formal and informal memorandums of understandings, in some instances formal contracts. And of course, Doña Ana is a member of the Metropolitan Planning Organization and has within its board of directors several elected officials from Doña Ana. And so it behooves us that Doña Ana County participate, be a member of the West Texas Regional Planning Group, again, for greater communication and to make sure that we're coordinating, especially in those areas that straddle the border. The mission statement of the Regional Planning Committee is to promote collaboration between transportation providers and health and human service organizations. Again, so that persons served experience an improved quality of life. Many times, one of the findings that had been mentioned before was that usually transportation service providers, they're interested, or their main focus is, of course, to move persons from point A to point B. And that's pretty much it. Social services, on the other hand, are providing a whole array of different services to individuals, and they want individuals to have transportation, to their locations as close as possible. And again, so it was a way to bring these two groups together and at least have communication and find gaps and see if there were areas where they would coordinate, communicate, and collaborate so that services could be provided. And of course, the vision statement for the regional planning group is that persons within West Texas, El Paso, the 6-county region, have access to social services that include customer-oriented, dependable, and convenient transportation. We went through about a whole year and a half of completing the regional plan that I just distributed. As you can see, it's about 180 pages. It's divided into about 9 chapters. Within those chapters, there's one chapter that identifies the 5 goals that were developed. The way we came up, the way we developed these was to look at the regional plan that had been done in the last 5-year period and evaluated it, found out where there were some shortcomings and there were some opportunities for growth. We then had public meetings throughout the region and did surveys, writers from the city, writers from the county, writers from social service agencies that were providing transportation. And based on those surveys, the group that was coordinating this developed 5 goals along with various operating objectives. And of course, the first goal is simply to implement the regional plan. Many times in a strategic plan is done, and then many times it's shelved and it doesn't receive a lot of visibility during the year. But this particular goal is to ensure, and it's number 1, that the plan is implemented rather than it's just being completed. Goal 2 is to promote collaboration resulting in continued and improved services to persons served. And of course, that collaboration is the member agencies communicating among themselves. Goal 3 is to fill gaps in services through identification and assessment of changing mobility needs, increased efficiencies, funding opportunities, etc. And goal 4, which is the reason I'm here today, is to maintain broad public knowledge of transit and social services throughout the 6-county region. And of course, we would add the dual counties, El Paso and Doña Ana County. And this is why through this goal, we've been making presentations to different entities, the city of El Paso, the county of El Paso, Socorro, Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Council of Governments, entities like that. We've been making presentations like this so that they know that we exist and that there's a regional plan that is being developed and we're charged with implementing it. And goal 5 is to promote efforts to maximize technical assistance and training to member organizations. This just identifies the operating objectives that are within the various goals. In the regional plan that you have before you, like I said, there's about 9 chapters, and they each cover a different area. The contents of the regional plan that you have before you includes empirical data from various sources, and that's found in chapter 1. This here, we looked at what the MPO had done, what the San Metro had done, the county, different entities, as well as what we had done in Amistad as the lead fiscal agent, because Amistad, as I mentioned, is has been providing transportation services in El Paso County and beyond for over 40 years. It's a 501c3, very well established. It was providing non-emergency medical transportation and has also contracted with the county and with the city to provide services when the city or the county need support in some areas because of changes in population or because there's a need to ask for additional support from nonprofit agencies. In the appendix, you'll see copies of the survey that was distributed throughout the region. We had, as I mentioned, writers from the county, from the city, from Amistad, And we had a team from Vista volunteers who were doing surveys when the buses arrived at a particular location, usually a transfer point. We would have Vista volunteers that were surveying the riders, asking them about the service, quality of service, et cetera, et cetera. The surveys are in the appendix. We had input from policymakers in Chapter 1, pages 11 through 20. And if you get a chance to look through Chapter 1, pages 11 through 20, you'll see the you'll see the policymakers that we interviewed personally and to get their ideas on about regional planning and about transportation and social services. You'll see that, of course, Mr. Armijo was one of the persons that we interviewed, along with another person from New Mexico Family Services in Sunland Park, New Mexico. We also interviewed, for example, the 2 county commissioners from El Paso County, the county judge from Brewster County, and then the directors of the Council of Governments, the director of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, people from Sun Metro, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see their comments and the list and photos of the policymakers that we interviewed as part of this regional plan. Chapter 3 addresses gap analysis, areas that we found through the surveys and through reviewing of, the data that we had, where there were some gaps in services and areas that we felt needed to be addressed. Chapter 8 is the performance measures. And these are important because this is what we developed to say, this is how we need to show TxDOT that we're meeting the goals and objectives of the regional plan. And here, the Metropolitan Planning Organization played a key role because they really gave us some very good feedback as to the development of the matrix to evaluate the performance of the Regional Planning Committee. Planning sessions with member agencies is covered under Chapter 1, pages 40 to 67. We had about 3 planning sessions with about 40 to 50 individuals at each planning session. I think Mr. Armijo was present at those as well, or at least at one of those. And at these planning sessions, we had individuals from the various entities. We got together, we broke into groups and identified those gaps. They also reviewed the results of the surveys and asked for their feedback. They give us all that feedback, and of course, it was then put together into a draft. About 3 or 4 months later, the group came back together again and looked at what had been developed based on all that input. And from that came a final draft of the regional plan that you have before you, of the goals and the objectives. Those goals and objectives then became part of the regional plan. In late December of 2021, we sent it off to TxDOT because they have to approve it. TxDOT has to approve all the 24 regional plans statewide. And it took about 2 to 3 months for them to approve it. They also sent some comments back to us. We addressed those comments and then sent it back. And eventually it was approved and it became the regional plan that you now have before you. It's a little late in its distribution. Again, like everything else, COVID affected the process and the ability to get it out as timely as possible. In 2019, we had a transportation summit as part of developing this regional plan. And we had panel sessions, discussed with public and attendees, participated in various public meetings before and after that transportation summit. The welcoming address was given by one of the county commissioners from El Paso County. TxDOT participated. In fact, the gentleman that you see there is Eric Gleason. He is the director of the transit division from TxDOT, and it is his division that oversees the performance of the regional plans, regional committees, and he came as was a keynote speaker for that event. We had about 75 attendees, again, reported on the finding as we were developing the regional plan, welcomed new stakeholders that joined the regional planning committee, and planned a 2021 summit, but unfortunately, as it points out, we had to cancel it because of COVID. However, it's been rescheduled, and we're looking forward to having it next year in 2024. This is just some photos that shows you the participation of that particular summit. As you can see, we had a cross-section of participants, dialysis center, Amistad, that's the CEO of Amistad, Ameri Group, one of the managed care providers, in Amistad. That person is the call center director of the call center that Amistad has, because as I mentioned, Amistad was functioning as a provider of non-emergency medical transportation. And so we had a call center of about 30 individuals that were receiving calls to provide transportation services throughout the entire region. The program director from 211 was there, and this particular panel is being coordinated by a representative from Health and Human Services, Region 10. Another session followed with the City of Socorro. That's Victor Reta, he works with the City of Socorro. The next person is the Director of Transportation. At that time, he's no longer with the agency, but he was the Director of Transportation. The person next to him, City of El Paso, he's a director of one of the programs that he oversees is the paratransit programs in El Paso, ADA issues. And then you see Sun Metro right next to him. Big Bend Community Action is a 501c3 that provides services in the regional areas. That they work out of Alpine. And then you see the County of El Paso being represented there as well. The person at the podium is from Amistad. She was the Chief Operating Officer for Transportation Services. So you can see a whole good diversity in terms of expertise that came together in 2019 as part of developing this particular regional plan. And so the West Texas El Paso members and the affiliates include all of these individuals. This is a partial list because it changes. Not all of them are on board anymore for various reasons. Some of them have dropped out or are not active. But we've gotten additional new member agencies that are participating with this regional planning group. You see some nonprofits and of course formal governmental entities. You see again South Central Regional Transit. We put the New Mexico in there so that the other individuals from El Paso know that we're talking about an entity in New Mexico. This is just the logos of the partnering agencies, and of course, this is not all inclusive. This is just some of the ones that we picked out, and as I mentioned, there's some missing. You'll see again South Central's Regional Transit's logo along with New Mexico Family Services. In 2022 and in 2023, these are the officers of the Regional Planning Committee that I'm speaking about. The chair is Mr. Victor Reta with the City of Socorro. The vice chair is with the Area Agency on Aging. Mary Tita Nunez is with Big Bend Community Action. Again, they cover the 4 or 5 counties outside of El Paso, and they work out of Alpine, Marfa and Alpine area. And then members of the steering committee include Lourdes Torres from New Mexico Family Services, myself, I'm on the board of directors of Amistad. I am the former CEO of Amistad, but after I retired, I was gone for about 2 years, and then they invited me back to serve on the board. So I'm on the board now with this particular planning group. Astrid Bunner is with Sun Metro, and of course, David Armijo is with South Central Regional Transit. The committee meets at least 4 times a year through our bylaws, but we usually have about 6 meetings. There's items that we need to cover that require us to meet more than 4 times. And the steering committee, which is made up of the officers that you saw there, meets a little bit more than the whole member agencies. Meetings are held at Amistad at 3210 Dyer, and now we have also virtual participation as well. And special meetings are held as needed. In 2020-21, we were having a number of meetings because we were in the process of finalizing the regional plan. But this year, now that it's behind us, the role is to implement the components of the regional plan. So we'll still have meetings, but not as much as we had before. We have our website, and of course, it's through Amistad. There's at the banner that clearly shows the WeTab logo. Click on it, and you go into the website. And so my being here is simply to visit with this entity and share the work that we're doing. We can always receive additional input through Mr. Armijo. You know, we have a conduit of communication with you all, and so I'm able to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Banuelos. And Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Banuelos. So this plan, you did a meticulous job in terms of finding out what the needs are. And I'm looking at page 3, Roman numeral 3 and
Okay.
number 3. And that has the map of the area. This was the entire area that was covered in all the data that you collected, right? It's this one.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and then I'm happy to see that, our David Armijo is on that board. Because I guess, I mean, it's really astounding, if not shocking, if not horrible, how a lot of these areas are totally isolated. Most of the area is rural. So is this plan going to be, oh, and then why is Brewster County, why is there that area of hope there? You know, it's a lighter blue than the navy blue. Is that where Alpine College is or something?
Yes, Alpine is
Okay.
there, but
Yeah.
there shouldn't be a reason for the different color blue.
It's,
It is. I hadn't even noticed that.
it really stands out. So I figured that's the college community, university there.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. That particular page is speaking about it might be in the areas of gaps of services where there's a need for additional transportation because Alpine has the university, the college there. And I think that that was one of the reasons why those were identified as areas that needed additional review to see if there was additional, not only transportation services, but social services as well.
It says here that inadequate transportation providers for need, and the bluer it gets, the darker it gets, the more it's
okay,
needed. So would then this plan is going to work presumably in conjunction with schedules for SCRTD?
Yes, we coordinate with other companies.
Okay. And then how does funding and all that work? Is it just our funding will remain, SCRTD will remain
Yes,
independent?
yes, if I may. Let me lay this out on 2 points. I think one point might not be inherent in your presentation. So one of the items for federal funding is to be able to have a consolidated services plan for a region. And essentially, the whole WETEP expands well above that level. So maybe you could address that, and that would kind of help understand
Help me
the
out,
funding.
please.
Well, for example, Section 5310, which deals with services for elderly and persons with disabilities. Section 5310 provides funding for entities that are providing that type of services for this population. South Central Regional Transit District can access those funding from the El Paso through the MPO because the geographic area that the Council of Governments covers is beyond El Paso. I mean, it goes into southern New Mexico. So there's been times that the South Central Regional Transit District has obtained funding through the MPO and WETEP. What WETEP does, we review the request for proposals, and then we submit to the Metropolitan Planning Organization a summary as to whether what they're planning to do is within the scope of the regional plan. If it isn't, we let the MPO know that it is our belief that the request for funding is not within the regional plan. And the MPO uses that information to decide whether to fund or not to fund that particular entity. The South Central Regional Transit District has gone through that process, and some of the funding has gone through that process, resulting in, and I'm not sure how many dollars you've received through 5310 through the MPO, but
Well, not enough.
Not enough. We're on the same wavelength, not enough. Okay, that's really what I want to say. So ultimately, this program that you're doing is being done across the country.
yes.
You're doing it from a broader context with really one agency kind of doing a lot. I mean, because when I was in California, we had multiple agencies doing what you're trying to do, and it was more localized as a result. So this is much more challenging. The other question I was going to ask, sharing with my staff, we've been talking about Denver RTD and a lot of agencies around the country, and I didn't have a chance to put that in my presentation today. I'll come back to it another time, but there's financial problems across the country in transit right now, where most agencies are canceling projects, even canceling bus orders because they just don't have the money to make those purchases. Even the federal funds may be available, but they don't have a local match. So can you address that? I mean, you've got the plan, just bringing it into today's world. How are things going within this the region we're talking about? How are they doing funding-wise? And you mentioned gap analysis. Is the gap analysis getting bigger?
Well, as you mentioned, funding is always an issue nationwide. And from the very beginning, the Regional Planning Committee has always struggled with having enough dollars to operate. We only receive about $30,000 for a 2-year period to operate the regional plan and to work with the member agencies to implement it. WETEP itself does not provide direct services. We simply coordinate the communication, the ability for the entities to communicate and coordinate. And as I mentioned, we also serve as a process whereby funding for Section 5310, funding for elderly and persons with disabilities, is reviewed before it goes to the Metropolitan Planning Organization. There's been times when we hear from TxDOT that funding may not be available at the next level, but they stress to us that if the funding goes away, the planning, the coordination, the member agencies should still continue to meet and operate. The only difference is that we would not have, say, the funding to have a staff person that would spend about 10 to 12 hours a week coordinating the activities of the regional plan. Right now, I provide some of that function as a volunteer because, again, I used to work with Amistad as the chief executive officer. But after I left the agency, I came back on the board, and then I was asked to work on this committee. So I'm not paid to do this. The funding that we do receive goes to cover just the basic costs. For example, the book that we did, we printed about 150 of those books, distribute them throughout the region. So funding continues to always be an issue. At one point, TxDOT was encouraging all the member agencies to develop a funding formula whereby all of them would contribute X amount of dollars based on their ability to pay, based on their budget, based on the number of persons that they serve. And so that money would come in to pay for the cost of being the lead agency. But that never developed. None of the agencies participated in that, or TxDOT got a lot of pushback on that. And so the funding that we do receive comes directly from TxDOT. And again, if the funding goes away, we haven't heard anything along those lines, but if the funding goes away, the emphasis is to continue to function as a coordinating entity. And I think that that's something that Amistad would be willing to do, the lead agency right now. Because historically Amistad has seen that there's a benefit to having this coordinated planning. A number of services have been developed simply because the entities are sitting in the same room and the heads of the agencies are talking and communicating. There's been training sessions that have been held whereby members from one particular entity participate with another one simply because we found out through these planning meetings that a training session was being held, say, for drivers and entity and participants from other entities could send their drivers to those training sessions and not have to pay because since it was already being done by, say, San Metro or the county or Amistad, the other entities participated in it. So there's been areas like that of coordination, communication that have been beneficial.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone on the phone have any questions for Mr. Banales?
Well, thank you very much.
Well, no, thank you so much for coming down and doing your presentation. And I will definitely take some time and go through this book that you handed us. And again, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, and Mr. Amigo does a very good job in representing you all. His expertise in the area of transportation, whether he was here in Texas or in California or now with New Mexico, is very valuable to us as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Banales, forgive me for calling you Mr. Bañuelos, and I was apologizing. Mr. Bañuelos, come back. Apologies for mispronouncing or.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, we have Mr. Shea, discussion and approval for the third quarter report for FY 2023.
Good afternoon, members of the board. It's great to be able to see everybody. I'm Adam Shea, Finance Officer for South Central Regional Transit District. First section I'd like to discuss is the third quarter financials. If you can believe it, we're already here with the third quarter. And as you can expect, third quarter is amounting to approximately 75% of the annual budget. The quarterly highlights are as follows. The expenditures, we have expended 73.4% of the annual budget on expenditures. And some of the items that you would expect to see would be, of course, the personnel and employee benefits, which amounts to approximately 72.7% of the total expenditures. The some of the items that are of note would be under the travel and maintenance expenditures, which the fuel falls under, and you will notice that there is approximately 33.96% increase over the last year fuel expenses as of this time period from last year. The other items amount to the supplies, insurance, projects, contractual services, and operating expenses. This amounts to a total of $1,580,386.05 for year-to-date through the third quarter. Under revenue, we have received 64.1% of the revenue anticipated. Most of that has been of the membership dues as well as the generosity from the Diana County. We've also have the fare boxes that we have been receiving on a regular basis. That amount goes up and down each month, but it is a nice amount to be able to have in our coffers. Some of the other items amount to the DM fees that we are getting through the Sunland Park area, as well as one of the items that we have recently done was the Texas FTA funds, or the funds through the Texas DOT. When we have initiated our first submission of the $696,000 that is available for the fiscal year 22. Once we are able to accomplish getting those, all aspects of that submission accomplished and on the right tracks, then we will be able to finish putting in the remainder for the fiscal year 22, which amounts to capital. And then we will be able to include another grant for fiscal year 2023. The total receivables as of the fiscal year or the third quarter amounts to $362,000. That is one of the things that I wanted to point out, primarily because the cash balance as of the fiscal year or the third quarter amounts to $63,830 in the bank. We have buses coming in very shortly and we need to be able to pay for those, and that's why we are counting on those funds to come in. And we are able, fortunately, we are able to put through our April expenses, for instance, right away, which will be able to put those funds into our accounts so that we can go ahead and pay for those buses, at least those portions that we owe. By that time, also that we owe those would, with hope, our amount through the Texas DOT will have gone through, and we will have an additional $300,000 in our bank account. Capital appropriations, we've only received 20.4% actually received. We have 26,000 that are outstanding in receivables, which, what?
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry. We have the 4 replacement buses coming in, and we've received 1 bus so far this fiscal year. The total receivables for capital amounts to $26,210 through the DFA, and we should receive that at any time as well, which is part of the accounts receivable that we have outstanding.
Mr. Shea, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. I know I was jumping all over the place. I
No,
apologize.
if you can go back one screen, the quarterly recap.
Yes, ma'am.
So just to clarify in my brain here, so our expenditures came in at 73.4%. We've spent that much so far,
Yes, ma'am.
but our revenue is only 64.1%.
Yes, ma'am.
How is that possible?
Number one is that we have depleted our bank account by a small portion. Granted, we haven't depleted it all the way down to 0, thankfully, but we have depleted that because we had over 100,000, if you recall, at the end of quarter 2. And also that has been depleted a little bit, as well as we have over 100,000 in current accounts payable. Items that need to be paid, yes.
I'm sorry. So the next screen over that showed,
This one?
yes. Okay, so you're saying we currently have in the bank $63,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so we depleted money from the general account? Is that
Yes,
what you're
ma'am.
saying? That's what's left over from after you've taken out to cover the expenditures?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions regarding the fiscal, or the third quarter financials?
I have one other question. So in our budget, when we put our budget together, we anticipated the revenues. Do you do a budget increase for that money that you pulled out of the savings to cover the expenditures? How do you, how do you account for that additional money that you've put into the revenue budget we prepared?
Well, those, out of the bank account, you mean?
No.
I'm sorry.
So when we're preparing our budget for next fiscal year?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so, we anticipate so much revenue,
Yes,
and then that's what we base our budget on, our expenditures.
right.
So now that we've added additional money in there, does that increase your overall budget that we projected? Because now, we anticipated we were going to get, I'm just going to make a number here, $2 million. And so then, we're still not at the end of the fiscal year, so we haven't collected all the money yet.
Right.
So this money that you pulled out of savings is an additional amount to the $2 million that we anticipated, correct?
Let me answer
you
that.
do-
So
Yeah, I was gonna say,
what we've done is we programmed, and we had, like last year, we ended the year with $96,000. And then through savings and efficiencies, we got up to 130,000. Our reserves built up. Now we've scaled them all back as we've been bringing in all these expenses, especially the vehicles. What will happen, and this was a phone call I made to our chairman a few weeks ago, is at the time, I thought in late March, 1st of April, we were going to get the 294. That's what Adam and I
Yes.
have been working on. So I was trying to figure out, to answer your question, how do we show all the money? Because what will happen is that we will then have a surplus that's going to be generated. So that's the answer to the question. The question is, do we book that as a surplus by June 30th on the fourth quarter when we come back? because this is through March 31st. So the question will be, how do we handle the excess cash? Also, on paper,
Right.
we have all these other grants. And so part of what we're going to do for the fourth quarter is kind of clean up our budget where, and you can see that when we get to the next presentation. It's taken us longer to get money. So same thing with the buses and other things. So the question is, how much of this do we show in the fiscal year? If we know we're only going to spend so much money, for example, with a capital grant of 3.1 million, we don't need to program 3.1 million in next year's budget because we're not going to spend it. We might spend a fraction of that, maybe a large fraction, but that's what we'll put in. So I think that gets closer to what you're trying to say or ask, is we're going to try to glean this to be more close to it. We're going to talk about the next budget here in a minute. We've not even programmed 5307 urban funds yet. And in fact, that's going up to $711,000.
Right.
So we'll get there. This is all new for us because we've never seen these funds. And now we're having to deal with another organization to get them. And the requirements are pretty extensive.
Okay, and the reason I asked that question is just because I know with the state, I mean, if we don't reach what we projected in revenue, well, we know that our expenditures cannot exceed what we received in revenues at the end when we're filing a report, because that's an audit finding. And so we have to we have to submit a budget adjustment to the state. So if we're exceeding that revenue, we still have to do a budget increase to our budget through the state. And I don't know if you all had to do that. I know that we do.
Well, so far, our history is we don't. But
Right.
that doesn't mean we shouldn't. We probably should. And that's, Adam has a regular discussion, and that's something Adam can bring up to them, and we can have that clarification. Our hope is that we solve everything by the fourth quarter.
Okay,
But
thank you.
that's a good point.
Unfortunately, we are doing things a little bit differently, or presenting a little bit differently, keeping capital separate from revenue, for instance, earmarking those amounts specific to expenditures, and then as well to fixed assets. So what we are trying to accomplish is to present to you so that you can see that the grants that we are receiving minus the amounts that we have to put in as far as our match is concerned, amounts to the total amount that we are getting as far as fixed assets, the remainder going to expenditures.
Yeah, and then if you were to receive that funding prior to the end of the fourth quarter, then you're going to have an excess, or are you going to take that money you took from the savings out of there and put it back? I mean.
It'll clear out, yes, at the end of the fiscal year,
Okay,
and then reprogrammed for the new fiscal year.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Adam, Mr. Shea. I think that cleared up the fog in my brain insofar as all this reconciling. It's like, my question is, how do you reconcile all of this? And I think municipalities, we just have a different system. Like, we already have our budget ready to go for July 1. And everything is not speculative. It seems like some of this is speculative, hinging on monies that haven't come in. I mean, yeah.
Well,
So
we have it.
And then, so my question is this.
Yes, ma'am.
We have, we're three-fourths of the way down, 73.4 has been expended to date. So then we have everything that's lined up that has been spent to date, almost 1.6 million. No, billion? No.
1.5,
Right, yeah, that's
yeah,
a
almost
dot.
1.6, yes.
1.6 million. So we still need a fourth to go. So, but we only have 64.1% received. So So then we're expecting about 35% more, and then that'll cover the fourth quarter?
That- We anticipate receiving that in the fourth quarter.
In the fourth quarter?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
are you holding your
got it
breath or
billed
keeping your
out.
fingers crossed, or is it pretty? What happens if it doesn't come in? Off the record, Becky, no. I don't want to,
No,
No,
but
I
I'll answer for
understand.
him.
And basically what it is the items that you see under the expenditures are actual expenditures. Okay?
right.
We have an amount of over $100,000 in accounts payable, which is not part of the expenditures. All right?
Okay.
Just a given.
Okay.
All right? But we have over $360,000 in accounts receivable. Those amounts that have been billed out either to the state, New Mexico, or through the Federal Transit Authority through Texas. And all, $360,000 also hasn't, it's on the books to be received. Okay, that is not part of the 64.1%.
But you see, if you look at 1,580,000 and divide that by 3, that comes out to about 5 million,
500,000.
About $500,000 a quarter.
500,000, yes, excuse me, 500,000, but we're anticipating total receivables in an amount less than that, 362,000.
Total receivables to date. We still have the fourth quarter yet.
Oh, I see, so we'll have money coming in the fourth?
Yes,
Oh, I see,
yes,
because I
yes.
thought that was.
Oh, no.
That anticipated the fourth quarter.
No, I'm sorry. That is what is currently,
Okay, yeah, okay, oh, okay.
and that's through
So-
the third quarter.
If,
So,
so everything, money, the way it's coming in and flowing out, you can predict or anticipate or whatever.
We're
Give an
anticipating.
educated guess or whatever the terminology is, so forgive me, I don't want to use the word guess as if you're just stabbing, something in the air. But it can be anticipated
yes,
that all this will balance out.
yes.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam
I'm
Chair.
sorry for the confusion.
No,
I
no,
truly am.
please don't apologize. I just ask a lot of questions.
No,
Becky.
no.
But I think I take up most of Ms. Baum's reporting. Thank you, thank you.
And Counselor Flores, I think you have good questions. I think.
Yes.
Those are very good questions. And so that brings me back to we've received a bus. Did we pay for that bus already? So that's already part of the expenditure?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You're anticipating another bus to come in next month? Is that what I heard? Or
We
not?
actually have 4 more buses coming in.
And so where is that money coming from to pay those?
It's in accounts receivable. It's been billed out. We anticipate receiving it by the time it is due.
Okay. What happens if it doesn't come in? I mean, gee, this is cutting it really close.
Yeah,
It's scaring me.
I understand. And the only alternative that I might suggest is that we go to the bank, we ask for a short-term loan, commercial loan, to cover that until we actually receive the funds that have been billed out.
And how much is it for those buses?
Oh,
Well,
Approximately?
don't get confused, 80% of that's paid directly by
yes.
the state.
Right, no,
We
I
only pay the
understand that.
balance. So the balance is about just under 30,000 per bus. One of the buses has got 100% on it. So 3 of the buses, we would have to come up with roughly about 90,000.
Right.
But we're also getting money from DFA and others that's going to pay for some of that. And we get local match for those from the state. So all those get 100% paid by the state of New Mexico or the U.S. federal government. We don't pay for any of it.
No, and I understand that, but we don't know, we're anticipating that money to come in. We don't have it on hand to pay at this point.
That is correct.
That is correct.
Well,
Do we
and I-
have enough money on hand to even take care of our monthly expenditures?
We are striving to stay one step ahead, yes.
And that is just anticipating that money to come in to cover those monthly expenses.
That's correct. We do have some that are coming in from the county, for instance, comes in on a regular basis. What we submit through the funding through the New Mexico DOT comes in on a regular basis. and all. So we are able to meet our current expenditures.
Okay.
It's those big ones.
If I may.
Counselor Flores?
So, Adam, you mentioned that the county portion comes in regularly. So do the municipalities also contribute on a regular basis?
The municipalities, we send one billing at the beginning of the year. They're all up to date.
So the end of the fiscal year?
End of the fiscal year for the new fiscal year, yes.
In other words, all memberships have already been paid to date
For the current fiscal
for
year.
this current fiscal year. They're not going out again till
Oh.
July.
Oh, I see, the beginning. Got it, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Anyone on the phone? Any questions, comments?
This is Meiji Powley, and I could not, when I tried to pull up the sheets that you sent out as attachments, Adam, I couldn't do it. Can you send what you put on the screen? I don't know why. I have Excel, but nothing showed up.
And you know what, Meiji? I did not see it on the email that came to us regarding the meeting and the agenda. That was not attached.
Yeah, I want to see the budget that he puts up there attached to my email, because I got a blank Excel sheet from what I could see.
On the very bottom, you know where it has the tabs? Where
Yeah,
it says cover sheet, quarterly recap, cash expenditures.
right.
Have you clicked on those?
Let me tell you what I clicked on. I copied on third quarter FY 023 financials, and that's an Excel worksheet. But I didn't have anything on it that I could see.
Bottom of the page.
Yeah, the
Pardon?
tabs are,
Yeah, the tabs are on the very bottom of that Excel worksheet.
Okay, let me go to that Excel worksheet because I have it there.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to have to do something different because it's not working for me. I'll go down to those tabs and see if I can pull it up. But it's much easier if he'd send out what he does pictorially, at least for me. I can read that.
Okay,
Oh,
we
okay.
can do that next time.
absolutely.
We'll send them out as separate pages.
Okay, and
Yeah,
I could either do that or create a PDF.
Yeah, PDF.
okay, a PDF is, I'll go back and try and pull it up again, but all I saw was the grid. So maybe you're right, I have to go to the bottom of that Excel worksheet and click on something, and I don't use Excel a whole lot myself, but usually I can read something on it. But it would be helpful if you'd send out what you're going to present, because that's pretty easy to see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I see what you're looking at, I think, Meiji. I pulled it up on my phone. Where it
If I
says,
go to the bottom, I'll try and pull up a tab.
yeah, and actually, the way I'm looking at it here, the tab's on the very top. And then you go on to the next tab, it says cash. Then
Okay.
expenditures, revenue, capital. Do you see those?
Okay, I'll have to go back because right now I'm looking at you guys. Let me go back into my emails and I'll try and do that. Because maybe I'm hold on. Let me,
Okay. yeah,
Okay.
I see what, I understand what you're saying.
and it may be that I'm just not that familiar with. So let me go back to the original email and try and open it again.
Yeah, it's the one that
But
was,
anyway, so it says open, yeah. I don't know. Okay, now I see it's at the bottom. Cash, expenditures, revenue, and capital. Okay,
yes, ma'am.
now I see it, because all I could see before was I wasn't looking at. Okay, now I can see it. Okay, so I'll go back.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Meiji.
Thank you.
That helps. I'm just, sometimes I'm a little challenged because of my macular degeneration and reading all that small stuff.
No, I understand, and I'm very visual, so I can understand where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Okay, that is all I had for the third quarter financials. If there are any other questions? There is
Just
a
the only
resolution.
question is, I'm concerned, just like you all are, about that revenue coming in, so, yeah, okay.
Okay, so my question on the revenue would be, is this mostly from the state or is it federal? And what's the time delay for some of that?
Adam?
I'm sorry, would you please repeat that question?
Okay. Like she said, because right now our expenditures are exceeding our revenue, we expect that revenue by hopefully the end of the fourth quarter. But is this mostly federal revenue? Is it state revenue? And what is the usual lag time once you sent in the request for funding or whatever you're sending to them to get paid?
Actually, it is federal funds that are the primary amounts that we are expecting at any moment. And these funds are because we have not attempted to file the funds with the Federal Transit Authority directly, as we have become a direct recipient recently. So it's a new system for us. In fact, we anticipated being able to put through funds on a monthly type basis to, like we do for the state, but it's actual annual. You put in the total amount that you would receive up to a particular time period. For us, we are seeking fiscal year 22, and that's what's been billed out so far. There's a $175,000 yet to be billed for capital, as well as an additional $200,000 that we're anticipating on billing for operating of what has actually expired for fiscal year 22.
Yeah, the turnaround time concerns me.
It concerns us as well. Unfortunately, they keep adding, or they keep making requirements of us. And we're at the point now that it has been reviewed, and it's been reviewed by all the departments within the Federal Transit Authority. Once that happens, once we are able to actually have all the I's dotted, the T's crossed, so forth, all the documentation into the authority, it will be a matter of just submitting the amount and requesting payment. That's it. It's getting the initial payment, the initial one.
Who sent a letter to Pete Buttigieg?
I'm sorry. Oh.
Never mind, I'm being sarcastic.
And he was just here a couple of weeks ago, too.
I know, we need to send a letter to Pete. We need help.
That's too funny. Yep, and probably he'll refer it to his administrative staff to handle, but unfortunately, it's just a waiting game. I know even through DFA here in the state, it's a waiting game, so.
It is a waiting game, and we have made significant strides in getting those funds. We anticipate having them very, very soon.
We'll all keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Me too, Meiji, me too.
Sure.
Councilor Flores?
Or did you want?
I wanted to add that I did draft a letter for our chairman to the FTA administration today, asking for help.
Okay, great, thank you.
I don't know, I'm looking at Christina. I know Christina had time to get it out yet, but that was on a list of letters.
So accounting-wise, when that money comes in, so I'm going to say when, not if.
Right.
When that money comes in, how do you reconcile the current FY23 and prospective FY24? Or is there any reconciling?
Well,
Or how does that show up?
There's limited reconciliation, and the only reason I say that is because the amounts that we've requested are specific to the actual expenditures for the fiscal year '22.
Oh, I see. So
And also, those amounts have been, we've already,
accounted for.
pardon me?
They've been accounted for.
They have been accounted for, yes. And the good thing about it is that when we do the expenditures, for instance, we are requesting the amounts from whatever agency that we have it earmarked coming from, whether or not it's capital, whether or not it's revenue. We have been taking those funds and we've been trying to keep them off to the side, especially when it comes to the large purchases. Everything else goes to pay the monthly expenses of, the agency. Since we have completed the actual fiscal year '22, we are able to take the difference, and that's what is the amount that we're requesting. And that's the difference between what we received and what was expended.
So the money that was expended in 2022
Right.
on these specific accounts for which the money didn't come in 2022, how were they paid?
Those amounts it was part of the amounts that we had requested or that we had earmarked, let's put it that way.
And that works in terms of accounting principles.
County principles, generally, the accounting principles would be receivables and the payables, the verses.
Okay.
And what is happening with our amounts, the amounts, for instance, under the expenditures, those are actual items that were paid out as of the time period. And the amounts that are in payables or receivables are not part of that amount.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
basically, I think we're living from paycheck to paycheck and not even quite making it from paycheck to paycheck at this point. Yeah. 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 No, and we are dipping into the savings or the reserves to cover the expenses that are
But with an
Coming up.
anticipation of getting these funds.
with anticipation, right?
Yes.
That those checks are in the mail and hopefully within our bank account pretty soon. Yeah. Yeah, it's scary. I wouldn't want to be in your position right now, but. Yeah. I would just be a nervous wreck, yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Are we intending to have some significant increases in the 5311 funds that are coming in from the state in this fourth quarter?
The 5311,
Yes. The reason I ask is because I'm looking here at the revenues that show what we've received to date, what we've invoiced but not received. And if we maintain the average that we've had, I don't see us making the budgeted amounts, even as they were adjusted. And so, we're right now, like say the rule, the 5311 rule, we had $441,000 that was budgeted. Thus far, we've received $185,000. We've invoiced $34,000. That takes us to about half of what we were budgeted, that balance, and that's what leaves that balance of $222,000. The 5311 inner city, we still have a balance of $124,000. So on items that were part of, we're focusing on the 5307 from TxDOT, but the 5311, are we going to make that up in Q4?
yes, the amounts that are under the balance column.
Yes.
Okay, that is the amounts that we have available through the remainder of the year to be able to bill out.
Okay, and so that's why I'm asking. So right now, we've been averaging $35,000, $37,000, $35,000. So let's go on the conservative side for Q3, $35,000 a month. That's $105,000 in the quarter. So are we going to bill, are we realistically going to bill 222,000 on?
I see your point.
And that's what I'm wondering, because the 5307 funds, aside from the 138,000 that was originally part of the original budget, anything else that we've adjusted the budget for, that's supposed to be, that would have been all surplus. But 5311, that was part of our initial budget, and that matches up with our expenditures. And so I'm wondering, are we going to be able to bill out that $346,000?
Actually, the amount that we will bill out at that time period amounts to about $200,000. Only reason I say is because these funds are the amounts that are available through September. Our fiscal year ends in July, or June, pardon me.
June.
So what it is, the amounts that will carry over into the new year, those amounts will be expended, we will be able to capture the first 3 months of the new fiscal year.
Let me make one correction here, because you're counting the numbers and you're correct. With the third quarter, we do not have funds for March from 5311 on either category, because we're always a month behind.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So that's 50,000 off the books. That's not even there. The other thing too is that we just received or started to receive the 5307 from the MPO. That's that
Right.
49,000.
Yeah.
And we actually received the 4,000 this week. So we are going to draw that down through the fiscal year June.
Right.
So all that 50,000 will come through. So we already got 2 other billings in this week, and so we're catching up through December right now. So these are all parts of the reason that the revenues are down, because we haven't received these. So that grant is in place. We're going to draw that.
Well, I know, and that's exactly why I guess I'm concerned. Well, that's where my concern comes in, because obviously I know we're talking about, the 100,000, not even $100,000 less, in what we have in the bank, and talking about possibly needing a loan to carry us over. But if these were all part of revenues that we were expecting to be part of this fiscal year, and we're not billing them, I want to, like I said, then I think as we go into this fourth quarter, I think we've got to figure out where, I think as the other board members have said, we've got to figure out where we're going to land, and if we've got to make some decisions on how we get there, well, we need to do that sooner rather than later. So I understand the concern of getting loans to carry us from over, but I think at the end of the day, as the mayor said, if our revenues are not going to be what we expected and we need to make those adjustments, then we need to adjust our expenditures in some sort of fashion if we can to match that.
If I may add, I think you're absolutely correct, because I think as we look at the short run, we have to figure out where we're going to go. But we should not lose track of the fact that the U.S. Congress awarded us $696,000. They also awarded us $711,000. I was at a meeting last week in El Paso where they're already looking at fiscal year 24, which starts in October, and because the census tracts have been updated into the process, we're going to get $811,000. So off the books, but within 5 months away from October 1st of 2024, we got 696, 711, and 800,000. We just don't have the money in the bank, but we have all this. So yes, we're going to have to get through the next 90 days, but we shouldn't lose track of the fact that we're looking at well over $2 million that can be used both for operations and capital from our region. We just don't have access because it's a slow process. Once we hit the first, thing on it,
Payment.
then the others should follow pretty quickly thereafter. Then the dialogue will be different.
Well,
Now, what do we do with all this money? And the one thing that this agency's never had, that your agency, in the city has, you have 3 reserve funds, as I understand. We've never had a reserve fund. We just never did. We started with just enough money to run service, and we've always been trying to get by. We actually generated a nice, healthy 96,000 reserve last year, and then we increased that. But these are all good questions, and we're struggling. All we know is that at some point the money will start coming in.
Well, I think, thank you, Mr. Amico, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the optimism with it. And I think, the concern is that, you know, like we said, we call it off the books. And so the board has to make the decision of what is on the books. And I will say though, that 696,000, that is built in with the revised budget. And so we still have quite a bit of funding. So agreed, you know, I think, heck, I would even, you know, consider, you know, looking at for the board, once we do have the funds coming in, that maybe we set a requirement for us financially that requires a certain amount of reserve that we keep, specifically for these reasons, that if we are anticipating federal monies that don't come in for whatever reason, we have a reserve that which we can pull from, so. But
Well-
like I said, go ahead, Mr. Shea.
No, you are quite right, Mr. Sanchez, quite right. One of the things that Mr. Armijo and I have been wanting to do was to have a nice little reserve so that we can pay for these, and anticipating the need to pay for the capital expenditures that come through. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that we have wanted to have that. We've started to build it up. Unfortunately, because we've been held back by our receiving of the funds from the FTA, for us to be able to make payments, our regular payments and everything, we have been dipping into those funds with the anticipation of receiving them before long.
No, I understand, Mr. Shea. Like I said, I don't, no doubt that I don't think that we're trying.
No, I wish I had a better
We're
answer
trying to
for
make
you.
it work, no doubt. I think, and it's just a matter of just making sure. I just wanted to understand, because like I said, I know the 5307s, that's a huge chunk of monies especially from the El Paso MPO. But like I said, I just saw the 5311 and wanted to make sure we have line of sight to that as well, because if we're not anticipating even those monies coming in, then like I said, we just need to make sure we've got to.
Fortunately, with the 5311, it's billed on a monthly basis, and we get that on a monthly basis.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shea. Thank you, Mr. Armijo. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, all the members, for your input on that. And I think the consensus, amongst us is we're concerned. Our concern, I think, basically is I don't want to get us further in the hole and, you know, off the books concerns me. I'd like to see the money that we have in the bank. And for example, now that the buses have come in or are anticipated to come in, that we don't have currently the means, but we are anticipating that money to come in. But, you know, anticipating and actually having it are two different things. And I think that's just the concern of the board, is that we don't want to get this board or this organization in a deeper hole, you know, where we just can't dig ourselves out of that either.
Agreed.
We truly understand in terms of, you know, you've been able to build that healthy reserve. And when I saw it there, I was more at ease. But, you know, we're not talking $10,000, $20,000 here. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's our biggest concern. And I'm sure for you all too. I'm sure you stress until you see that money in the bank. Do you realize, because you know you have that pile of bills that still need to be paid, and then we have payroll, we have staff also. So I agree wholeheartedly with Commissioner Sanchez that we have to build up that reserve and set a limit as to what we want that reserve. I know by law for municipalities, we have to have 1/12 in reserves of our total budget, and that's mandatory. And if we don't, and if at any one time we go underneath that, it's an audit finding. And so we don't want to put ourselves in that position. So I truly thank you all for your comments, and I know that Mr. Armijo and Mr. Shea worry about this also. So, you know, just keep us posted, and we'll pray that when we meet next month that money is in the bank. So.
Absolutely. Well, believe me, we had hoped to be able to come here and tell you, look how much we've got in our reserve. And that was, believe me, that has been
I understand.
Mr. Armijo's and my hope, and it just did not pan out before the board meeting, and I'm sorry.
No, I understand. And as municipalities, I mean, I know being a small municipality that, I mean, your budget is probably what the town of Mesillas budget is. And when we get that GRT notice that we got so much, it's like in a sigh of relief because we know that money is there, but I truly understand where you all are coming from. So, okay, and if you want to proceed,
Thank you.
thank you.
Now, there is a board resolution for the approval of the third quarter financials.
Okay, so at this time, if we could please have a motion to approve the third quarter financial report?
So moved.
Okay,
Adam, can you close that so we can see the votes?
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor to approve the third quarter by Counselor Flores, and if we could have a second, please.
I'll second the motion.
And the second has been made by Commissioner Sanchez. Any further comments or discussion regarding the third quarter report? Hearing and seeing none. Becky, roll call, please.
Nora Barraza,
Yes.
Olga Nunez. Ms.
Yes.
Nunez? Thank you.
Yes.
Meiji Powie,
Yes.
Ivan Flores,
Yes.
Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Diana Murillo.
Yes.
Thank you. Passes.
Okay, the motion does pass unanimously.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Sanchez.
And just a question, and like I said, I mean, I guess I'm used to usually seeing the resolutions in our packet. Is that something that, I just, because I was looking here, I see the agenda item number 9 for approval, but it didn't have a resolution number.
Right,
So
and
I
that's,
don't know if there's anything we've got to document as a resolution. I mean, we know it's agenda item, but didn't know if it had a resolution number.
That's not in the board packet?
it is not in the board.
Resolution, so, okay, resolution
Oh, yeah,
23.
The agenda's not in here.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. I just wanted to make sure, like I said,
And we don't have a resolution either in the packet for
Yeah,
the budget.
Page 9. This isn't it?
oh,
You have it.
Page 9. It's before.
Page
okay,
9.
got it.
Oh, okay, forgive us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm used to, sorry. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Shea. Thank you.
Okay, we were looking
Chair.
under the tab of the third quarter.
Yeah,
And so
good, thank you.
if we could just have a motion to amend, well, I think we have already taken a vote on it. So I just, for the record, let's go ahead and just say that that motion that just passed on the approval of the third quarter report is referenced as resolution number FY 23-25. Okay, are you all okay with that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to discussion and presentation of the FY 2024 budget as of March 2023. Adam? And Mr. Shea, just for clarification, this is not going to be an action item, correct?
That's correct. I'm
Thank you.
bringing you up to date as far as our current work towards gaining a budget for fiscal year '24.
Okay, thank you.
To begin, for revenue and capital, we anticipate a decrease in revenue of 5.6% over the fiscal year '23. Good thing is, as far as the amounts that we have currently, a decrease of 5.6% is only as it pertains to the MPO that we have. The amount that we have indicated there is the amount that's carried over currently from the open fiscal year '22 items. Fiscal year '23, since it has not been identified specifically, we didn't put an amount there, but we anticipate that that would be also increased so that our overall revenue would end up being an increase instead. However, as it currently stands, it's a decrease of 5.6%, for a total of $2,420,757.34. The capital appropriations is a decrease of 5.9%. And this here is an anticipation of our purchasing the Sunland Park facility, getting in there, we're anticipating changes possibly to that facility. Number one is we're bringing electric. We're going to be coming over from the electric box and creating an electric grid for conversion over to a fully electric facility. And that is another aspect that we are looking into currently. As far as the capital appropriations, it's not only the purchase of the facility, but gaining a couple of additional vans for our van pool program, an additional service vehicle for the Sunland Park facility, or that would be housed in the Sunland Park facility, continued refurbishing of the bus stops that we have so far. We have been successful in cleaning up a number of our bus stops, thankfully, and that will continue in our new fiscal year. And then, of course, starting the conversion over of the fleet from diesel or gas to fully electric. And that is going to definitely start in Sunland Park. We're also looking into putting a grid or two within Anthony as well for the buses that will be housed there. But this is for the revenue and capital, like I said, a decrease in revenue of 5.6%, decrease in capital of 5.9%. Switching over to expenditures, over fiscal year 2023, we anticipate an increase of expenditures by 5.2% as they currently, as we anticipate them currently. 3.1% would be that of, oops, thank you. Okay. 3.1% is that of personnel and employee benefits. The remainder being broke down between travel and maintenance down through the operating expenditures. Now, we have also programmed, and this is a suggestion as far as a COLA for our employees to be at about 5%. As if you'll look at the page for expenditures, you'll notice down at the bottom the anticipation of a 5% COLA would put our total amount of expenditures at $2,332,916.98. That would be if a 5% COLA is attributable to the expenditures as we currently have them outlined. That would put our budget at about 8.3% increase over the fiscal year 2023. Yes.
Mr. Shea,
Yes.
my question is, we have a decrease in revenue of 5.6%. How do you anticipate, even though it's proposed a 5% COLA increase, if we have decrease in revenue?
So in
Are
other
we
words, how
cutting
can
out
we justify an increase by 8.3%, whereas we're getting a decrease in revenue by 5.6%?
Right.
Correct?
Correct. And then my second part of this question, didn't we just recently give an increase
We gave an increase at the beginning of this current fiscal year.
of how much?
It was a total of 5%.
Thank you. And then, so the answer to the other?
The answer is that,
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez?
Thanks. May I add, and I don't know if this is where you're
Part B,
going with
we have
this.
a Part B.
No, it's not part, well, it's just noting that, so one of when we look at the revised budget that we were just reviewing for the current fiscal year, we had anticipated to have about a $600,000 surplus because of the 5307 funds that are coming in. And
Is that-
so although it's a decrease, if you look at the 5307 budget here, which is showing $566,539, it's a decrease from the 696 of the 5307 that was budgeted for here. So essentially, although it's under what the revised budget for the current fiscal year, it's only because they're anticipating a $500,000 surplus. So still in the end, we should still have a surplus of revenue, even with the decrease of revenue.
That's correct.
With the decrease of revenue.
I couldn't have said it better myself. No, he's absolutely correct.
Correct.
And
But
what
let
we
me
did,
add on to that. If you look at the two key numbers,
Which numbers?
if you go back to your revenue, so your revenue is 2.4 million, and I think you're looking at the higher number, correct? Yeah,
Yes.
2.4. And if you look at the subtraction of the higher cost expenditure with that COLA, which is 2,157,459, the difference, and this is just back of the envelope, we'll have excessive revenues of 263,000.
Is though the 5%
Programmed.
already calculated into that in the expenditures?
that's correct.
Okay. So you're saying we're still going to have a surplus,
Yes.
Yes,
including, okay, so you have a personnel expenses at a 3.10% increase, and then another to be considered a 5%.
correct.
So you're asking the board to consider a 3.1%, but also 5%.
Actually, the 3.1 is based on the current personnel and the current amounts that are paid for personnel.
The 3.1% increase is on your current personnel,
Pardon me?
is on the current personnel?
Yes,
And so the merit increase COLA, explain to me, is that in addition to the 3.1%?
the 3.1% is subsumed within the 5%.
Is assumed within the 5%?
Yes.
But at this point, it's only a suggestion.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's early. We should have titled all this preliminary budget, because this
Yeah.
is really the first look at this. We'll come back again either next month or in June. Typically, we do June as a tentative approval, and then we finalize in July.
July, right.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Thank you. And it's not specific to the actual numbers, but I'm curious on the capital expenditures for the next fiscal year, on the transition to the electric buses. Didn't know, Mr. Armijo, have you done any work with El Paso Electric in getting that set up? And the reason I ask is because I don't know if it will apply to the SCRTD being but I know they have several rates that make it extremely cost-effective.
Yes.
To charge, especially overnight, and if you separate them into their own meter. I can't remember, but if I know for private businesses, it was something like 2 cents a kilowatt hour to charge.
Absolutely. We are fortunate that the state of New Mexico actually has a state agreement, so we're all pulled into that. So the city of Las Cruces will be in that, we'll be in that, but it does call for strategic planning of that aspect. Adam was at a conference recently, a summit in Dallas a couple
Bus
months
summit,
back.
or transit bus
He
summit.
ran into somebody, we've talked, we're looking at possibly acquiring some software to tie this in. So the software actually manages your fleet to make sure you're fueling at the right times. It can actually override that charge point charging station we have out there right now, that's the same company. And so those interfaces is a thing. The other thing that's not on here yet, we haven't put it in there, is the rebates.
Right.
We are going to get money back from, well, from El Paso Electric, but it's both the state of New Mexico and the state of Texas. So we're actually going to get money on that. And it's quite a bit of money. And so that's got to get programmed in here too. So we're working through that. I know Adam has already submitted some application stuff. So there's a lot, again, very preliminary, but there's more money coming in. And we're talking about $50,000 here. So that's not little money. So it will add up.
Yeah, no, and I just want to make sure, because I think if you know, where El Paso Electric and the rates that you're going to be paying for the fuel, the charging and so on, like I said, I'd be curious to see how El Paso Electric can partner with us, because even if you do have solar panels, we'd have to have, you know, I mean, there's so much logistics there, but just want to make sure that we're looking at it, because I think there's a lot of incentives out there, and making sure that we're taking advantage of them for the SCRTD, so that in the end, we're reducing our operating expenses. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Sanchez.
And that brings us up to date as far as the fiscal year 24 plan. Is there any other questions that I might answer?
I do have one more question, Mr. Shea. So I'm looking at the very last page of the proposed budget. And so on the very top, it says personnel services, 3.1%. On the bottom, the total expenses, so you're anticipating overall a 5.2% increase?
Okay, the 5.2% is the total amount of expenditures increased over from fiscal year 23. It's an increase of expenditures of 5.2%.
The 5.2 increase, I see it now. And so then if we add that 5% COLA proposal, which is, I'm just so confused. You're proposing a COLA merit increase of 5%, but then here you put a 2.4%.
Well, I'm sorry, the 2.4% is of the total expenditures.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just because I'm looking at, it says salaries and employee benefits, but you're saying total budget. So forgive me.
I'm sorry. The 2.4.
Yes.
If you look at it, what it is that is 2.4%. Oh, wait a minute. That didn't.
I think it's your fiscal year 23 versus 24.
Yeah, it's 23 versus
Salaries
24.
and benefits. So all of it would go up by only 2.4%. That's what
Oh, is that what that means?
with the increase, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that
I
is.
use a little arrow
Yeah.
between the two.
Okay. Gives me a better picture.
If I may mention one more thing. If you look at the columns, there's a method to Adam's madness.
Yeah.
So in the previous two fiscal years, 2022 and 2023, we assumed 65-35% between what was going to be the rural-urban funds,
Right.
vice versa. We've now increased that to 50-50. We've also, because we don't want to get into the weeds, but I'll just get in the weeds, we also shifted to 50-50 because when we go after the $696,000 funds, we can't use that all for operations.
Right.
Or labor, so on. We have to break into preventive maintenance, security, and fuel, and so on and so forth. So by doing it this way, we've done with a new grant coming in from the state is we cleaned out whatever we would get from federal funds from that grant. So that way, this area is 100%. We're preparing for the audit that's coming.
Okay.
So in addition to everything Adam's hearing from you all tonight, he's got the audit coming probably next year.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shea.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is closed session regarding personnel matters. And at this time, if we could just have a motion to close our regular meeting and go into a closed session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 10-15-1, H2 and 5 from NMSA 1978.
So moved by Flores.
Okay,
I'll second that motion, Sanchez.
we do have a motion on the floor by Councilor Flores, seconded by Commissioner Sanchez. Any comments, discussion? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call, Becky, please.
Nora Barraza,
Yes.
Olga Nunez,
Yes.
Meiji Powie,
Major, can you hear us?
I was on, yes. But
yeah.
is somebody gonna dial me in, or what are you gonna do?
I think
For
you
those
just
of
need
us-
to stay on the line.
Okay,
Just stay on the line.
all right.
Yvonne Flores,
Yes.
Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Diana Murillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And it's getting crazier out there, too. Okay, if we could just please reconvene, and if we could have a motion to come back into regular session, and what was discussed in closed session regarding personnel matters per the Open Meetings Act 1015-1H2 and 5 from the New Mexico SA 1978, and no action was taken. If we could have a motion to reconvene and that no action was taken in closed session.
So moved. I move to reconvene and to, for the record, no action was taken at this time.
We do have a motion on the floor by Councilor Flores.
I'll second that motion,
And we have a
Sanchez.
second by Commissioner Sanchez. Any discussion, comments? None? Becky, roll call, please.
Nora Barraza.
Yes.
I see Ms. Nunez is gone. Meji Powie,
Yes.
Yvonne Flores,
Yes.
Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Diana Murillo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, motion does pass unanimously. Do we have any board comments at this time? Hearing none, seeing none. If we could have a motion to adjourn, and our next meeting will be May 24th, 2023.
So moved.
Second, Sanchez.
Motion on the floor by Councilor Flores, second by Commissioner Sanchez. Any discussion or comments?
No, but David, are you still there? Yes. Okay. My suggestion would be, if you're planning to come to TRC, that we wait till after the end of May. We are going to have a new city mayor.
Okay, I can do that.
Bruce Swingle is absolutely, you're not going to be able to do anything with him. So he's a manager, I'm sorry, the city manager. And we have a new city manager coming on, and I can talk to you about that and who she is. And her name is Angela Gonzalez, and I think she's from up north, but I think she might be more amenable than Bruce was as far as any participation.
Okay,
That's my comment.
all right,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you for that.
Okay, any other comments? Hearing and seeing none? Roll call?
Nora Barraza,
Yes.
Meji Powie,
Yes.
Yvonne Flores,
Yes.
Manuel Sanchez,
Yes.
Diana Murillo.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, motion, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
David, I'll email you.